was standing in front of my brothers in the Sons of Union Veterans, that 3 raps would have got everybody up. But you don't have to do that. So I want to introduce myself and thank you all for coming. My name is Dexter Bishop. I am a trustee to the General Lander, Post 5, Grand Army of the Republic Hall and Museum. The other trustees are floating around. Patty, you want to wave your hand so people, and Bob is over in the back. I think that covers all that are here. Oh, Mike, how you doing? Sorry. I got to put these on and then I can't see you for sure. But anyway, I want to say thank you very much for coming and spending some time with us today. I hope when you leave here, you're going to feel like, gee, what a wonderful place. To start it off, I would just like to go along with what I was saying a minute ago. My name is Dexter Bishop, and I am being also as a trustee. I am past department commander of the Massachusetts Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War. I'm also, at the present time, a chaplain to the department and chaplain at the General Lander Camp 5 meeting that we hold here, and Camp 22, which is a meeting that we have out at Chelsea Soldiers Home. What makes the Soldiers Home so important to us is this post here in its day, under the leadership of a fellow by the name of John G.B. Adams, helped found the Chelsea Soldiers Home. I am also a chairman of the National Sons of Union Veterans Committee, Special Committee on Veterans Affairs. We're looking at pulling together an entire country as to where can we do our best to help veterans of today. And we found that one of the very interesting places that needs us, and more than a lot of other places, because it's not usually very heavily known, and that's with the local soldiers' homes. We have 2 in this state, one in Chelsea, and the other one is out in Holyoke. So we're looking at ways to, one, focus some attention on them so that they don't get, like so many items in the budgets of today, get sort of pushed to the side because they're kind of been there for a long time. So we're looking to get around that. Also, I'll forget, so I better do it now. And that is, I'd like to recognize some of the individuals that are here with us today. So if I call your name, I already did some of them, but if I call your name, please just let everybody know what you look like. Chris Bibby, he's from the Friends of the GAR. Tom and Wilma Dalton, where are you? There you are. How are you? Good. Good. Well, actually, when one of the programs that we ran a few years back focused on Tom and his wonderful book, and we actually had him teaching the teachers of Lynn about the book, and it went over very well. Jim Mamano, where are you? There you are. He is a assistant city solicitor and a very good friend of ours. He's always willing to listen to us when we look for help. We have Coco from Ward, what's that, Ellingson? There we are. Ward 3. I used to live in Ward 3.
Good. You still are.
Yeah, years ago. In fact, I hate to admit this, but when I was a lot younger than I am now, I was part of the Ward 3 Civic Association. And so I know Ward 3 from 40 years ago, but, and then some. Yeah. Donna Capola, well, there you are. And Lorraine Gately. Pete Cabana. How you doing? Lynn Historical Commissioner Calvin Anderson, where's Calvin? There you are. I have to say, Calvin has been a very great help around here. If you find any dust, watch out because he'll be swooping down on it. He has been keeping this place super clean for the last few months and working very hard helping us here. Carl Greenler. Well,
He's running late.
what?
He's running late.
He's running late, okay. Pat Lee, where are you, Pat? Hi, Pat, how you doing? Again, from the Historical Commission. Mike Sweeney, where are you? Another trustee. I'm sorry I didn't get you the first round, because I didn't quite see you. And he's the Veteran Service Officer for the city. Rich Starbuck, Ward 2 Councilor. And Steve Archer, Fire Chief. Where's the Fire Chief? Hiding, in the back there, okay. It's nice to see you. I volunteer at the Topsfield Fire Department, and not as a firefighter, but I do other things for them. And let's see, Latricia Thompson? Latricia. There you go. Okay. Community Development and James Marsh. Where's James Marsh?
James is on the lake.
No, okay. All right, I thank you for that, for coming. The main reason that we got started in having this here, of course, is the mayor, Mayor Jared Nicholson. And in a moment, I would be asking you to come up and say a few words in relationship to your great, we have that nice picture there for you. And since we can't give you anything over a certain figure, we have to give you a smaller version. You know how it is. I'm a former state worker, so I know that we couldn't accept anything over $50. And in my job, it was down to a cup of coffee. Well, so let me just quickly give you a little history about this hall. First off, the Grand Army of the Republic, General Lander Post 5, formed in 1886, down about a block from here, in a building that's not here now. But there was a building down there, and they were there, and they had 8 or 9 guys join at the very first time. And then they met from up in Market Square, City Hall Square, the Masonic Hall, and then they built a place, the Coliseum here in Lynn, and of course that's burned down a long time ago, but they had that as a place to meet in. That was also one of their ways of building funding. In 1885, they purchased the lot that this building sits on. They started building it in October of '85, and it was finished in the spring of 1886. And they moved in, and they took and made this building and its contents a memorial to all veterans of the day. Now today, it's still a memorial to all veterans. The only difference is it's up to of the day today. So I want you to realize you're sitting in some pretty hollow ground. Every time that we meet up here, which isn't too often, you have to think of the men that sat in those chairs behind you and over there and behind me and conducted the business that they had. This strange thing in front of me is called a capstan. That capstan came to this post back in 1866 or 7 when the Kearsarge, which was a Union vessel that chased the CSS Alabama all around the world. The Alabama was a raider and was going after all kinds of Union Shipping, and they were very successful. And just by chance, the Alabama had to go into Cherbourg in France to have some work done on its bottom, and the Kearsarge, after chasing that ship all around the world, had to go into London and have its bottom scraped at the same time, and they didn't know it until they got there. They immediately came out, challenged the Alabama, and the rest is history. And if you want to find out the rest of that history, you got to come back, because it's an exciting story. And how that got here is even greater as far as being exciting. How did that get here? So come back. I've got lots of those to give you today. The leadership of this hall, of Post 5, were instrumental, and I don't know how many of you know this or not, but General Electric is in Lynn today because of members of this post. It's an amazing story. Another, if you want to find it out, you got to come back. And I or somebody else can tell you. And the thing is, we can show you the records that prove it. It's not me just saying this right now, but it's there. We have everything that we need to prove that statement. We're also very instrumental in bringing electricity to it. When they built this building, they put electricity, a dynamo, DC current, in the basement. If you look at all of these here, well, I was on a senior citizen tour up at the State House, and when we were in the governor's office, the person that was taking us through pointed and said, there's 2 of those in the country, and we have 1. And I whispered to the guy next to me, I know where this string are, and they're here. Anyway, the story on these, again, will blow your mind as to the amount of things that this hall is responsible for, that the veterans were responsible for. Then we come to a time in which the veterans realized, like me, they were getting old. And we're not going to be around forever. So they went to the legislature and had the Acts of 1919 passed. Basically what that act says is if the people of Lynn will, after taking a vote, and they vote to accept this building as a memorial to veterans, they could then have it when they were done. The last veteran that belonged to the post passed away in 1944. Bob, where's Bob? There's Bob, another the veteran. He used to, when the kids came in, he would say to all the kids about this fellow, the last one to die, a fellow by the name of Corson, at 103. And he died during the Battle of the Bulge. And of course, nobody could understand that one. And didn't know when it happened, actually. Battle of the Bulge being in World War II, 1944. So he was around a while. And by the way, doctors told him when he got wounded, the button, shot right here, pushed the button in his coat. They got the button out, couldn't get the bullet, and the doctors discharged him and said, if you don't get that button out, or that bullet out, button, you will die in a year. He died at 103. So he outlived everybody. Anyway, and this life that he had also, it just goes on and on. I could probably talk for the next 3 or 4 days on the stories that are in here and the things that we're planning on doing. Just quickly, just to give you a sense, we now have 3 videos that will be going on national YouTube via the Sons of Union Veterans. We have a YouTube there, and so they're about 40 minutes each, and so that's also all designed to bring in individuals to see what we have here. Also, this year, if things go well, we will be producing at least 5 10-minute programs based on the lives of somebody in this hall, where we have the actual, their words of what was their most memorable moment in the war. The story that I love to tell is a young man in the battle down in Spotsylvania. As you probably know or don't know, but in every battle, you usually lost sight of your foe because they're firing black powder. And the smoke gets so thick, you're just firing into the smoke. You don't know if it's going to hit anything or not. They sent this kid up into the top of a tree, 50 feet up. He got up to the top of the tree, and he looked over, and he saw where the Confederates were, and he yelled down, "Over here." The only problem that occurred is the Confederates did the same thing, and they were up first. And when they saw the kid come up, they swung their artillery in the direction of that tree and fired on it and blew the tree out from underneath him. On his way down, his most memorable moment was thinking he was going to die when he hit the ground. Of course, he didn't, because he's up here a year later telling us what his most memorable moment was. But to have those types of stories and a picture to go with it. And that brings me to the mayor and his great. And I'd like to invite you up now, if you would, to just say a few words.
Thank you so much, Dexter. That was an amazing introduction. Such a wealth of stories, of passion, and truly a gift for you to be able to share with us. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you to the entire GAR team. I know you mentioned all the team. Particular thank you to Wendy Joseph and her work here. The work here happening is amazing, so thank you so much. Being here today is such a vivid reminder of how important it is that we take care of this space. It's truly a gem for the city of Lynn, for the entire country. The history that's here, the stories that are here, the examples that we have to look up to. It's an example that I've had to look up to my entire life. When I was a kid, I was really close with my grandfather. He was a Purple Heart World War II veteran, and he was one of my heroes, and this is one of his heroes. And I grew up hearing stories about Benjamin Franklin Peach Jr. from when I was a little boy. Spent countless hours in my grandfather's attic going through old papers that he had saved, and he would be so thrilled to know that these stories are being remembered, that they're being told, and it's an obligation that we have to ourselves, to our children, to the next generation, to preserve those stories. And they say something about us now. The stories that we choose to honor and remember, the story of saving the Republic in the Civil War, to the example of preserving democracy and liberty, the stories that we choose to elevate now say something about our values today. And I think that's an example. You can walk into the GAR and see those stories being told here, and how important it is to honor that history so that we know where we've come from and know the struggles we've had, because those struggles continue. We haven't figured it all out as a country, and we have a lot of work to do. And knowing that this has been a battle that we've been fighting in different ways for centuries to try to live up to our creed, to our values, I think is just so important. And so I really thank everyone here who's doing that work to tell those stories. Those public spaces, so not only just the stories, but the physical spaces that we choose to maintain, to preserve, to become stewards of for the next generation are similarly reflections of our values as a community about what we think is important, and these histories and the values that are reflected in those histories, I think are a really important part of that. And then, of course, the purpose of this building originally is an important reminder of another ongoing obligation that we have to our veterans. And this is something that that we as a society continue to need to work to improve on in terms of the care that we provide our veterans, and the example that we have here of the building that this generation built to honor their veterans, I think is an important reminder to us about the obligation we have to care for our veterans and the wars that have continued to be fought to preserve freedom in this country. So I really just want to thank everyone so much for the work that they're doing to preserve this. I know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I know a lot of folks in this room are interested and excited to do that together. So it's really special to see my great-great-grandfather displayed here, and I'm truly honored. But more than that, I think it's special for the city to have this as a resource and to know that we're all committed to preserving that and building on that and sharing that with future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would also like to mention that we have two direct descendants of the mayors. We have two mayors here that were members of this post. You see 6 of them between, we'll say, 1866 and 1905, somewhere around in there. They were mayors of Lynn, but they were also members of this post. And in the fact that they were very much into the Grand Army of the Republic, they brought that love for country into their jobs at the mayor's office. And I always told the story that if you lost your job and you were a veteran, you did not go home and tell the wife you were unemployed. You came here and went home and told your wife about your new job. All right. Now you can see why they were able to do that on each side of me. They were very hard workers. So many things that the men of this post, not only going down south and fighting a war where, and I'll say of Americans, because both sides were American, over 700,000 people gave their lives. Today we kind of forget all of that because it's old history. But if we don't know our history, we tend to make the mistake and do it again. So I just always really push hard to make sure we have plenty of history. By the way, we do have, and if anybody is interested, that we will probably next year, we will kind of curtail because of COVID, but we will be running our programs on Zoom and in-house here. So if you would like to receive the invitation, please don't forget to put, give us your email address, and we can send you that every time. Because we bring speakers in from all over the country. There are park rangers, authors. We've had them as far away as California, as far south as Texas, Florida. And so there's plenty of opportunity to really find out about the history between 1840 and about 1919, when there was only 1 or 2 left to carry on the good fight for this building. Anyway, I would like to introduce now the 2 individuals and invite them up if they'd like to say a few words. Thomas Bobier's ancestor, if you'd like to have a few words, you might ask.
Yep. I grew up in Acton, Mass. but my father grew up in Lafayette Park, and his father was an attorney who would walk to work to his office on Exchange Street, where he was a member of the Lynn Bar for 60 years. Every Memorial Day weekend, my family, 3 generations, would gather at Pine Grove Cemetery, the family plot to put flowers on the graves, still do. And the oldest grave there belonged to Samuel Bouvier, my grandfather's grandfather. He was born in 1816. He was a successful manufacturer of ladies' footwear. He had a large factory on Oxford Street, the next block. And I guess he'd like to keep an eye on things because his house was directly across Oxford Street, starting about where the Eastern Bank drive-through is today, which of course puts it right behind this building. One snowy February evening in 1866, a woman named Mary Patterson slipped and fell on the icy sidewalk in front of his house, injuring herself badly. Samuel and his wife took her in, did what they could for her, and the next day she was taken by carriage to her home on Paradise Road in Swampscott. By the way, she subsequently submitted a claim for damages to the city, so mayors have to worry about trip and fall claims even then. 11 years later, on January 1st, 1877, I don't know who gets married on New Year's Day, but January 1st, 1877, Mary Patterson, now fully recovered, married for the 3rd time, becoming Mary Baker Eddy, who we know today is the founder of Christian Science. Coincidentally, on that same New Year's Day in 1877, my great-great-grandfather was inaugurated as mayor of Lynn. Like a man, I'm guessing, was a hero of his, Abraham Lincoln, Samuel shared a couple of things. He was number 16, mayor of Lynn, and like Lincoln, he was a Republican. Interesting perhaps today, but at that time, not so much, because Lynn was well known as a hotbed of abolitionist, anti-slavery feeling. And the Republican Party, of course, had been founded on that issue a few years prior. As I'm sure this audience knows, Frederick Douglass, the great author, newspaper publisher, activist, lived in Lynn for 6 years with his family in the 1840s, just 3 years after he escaped from a Maryland plantation. After serving 2 one-year terms, I can't imagine running for office every year. My great-great-grandfather went back to the shoe business full-time, and a few years later, of course, in 1886, this building opened. He did serve briefly, as did his brother John, in the Civil War, even though both were well into their 40s when the war broke out. You know, the Civil War that this museum remembers was probably the most consequential event in American history. And it really should be of great interest to us today. Not only the 700,000 war dead at a time when the population was a tenth of what it is today, and the 4-year battle details, but what were the issues and events leading up to the Civil War? And then certainly what were the things that transpired afterwards during Reconstruction? Some people would say, well, sure, that's interesting, but it was so long ago, ancient history. And yes, in a technological sense, certainly that you could make that argument before the automobile, before the telephone, before electricity, basically. And yet when I hear that, I'm reminded of a story my father used to tell about listening to the radio one day as a boy in the 1930s, and the song When Johnny Comes Marching Home Again came on the radio. And his grandmother, who was living with them at the time, piped up and said, "I can remember when that song first came out." Well, I checked, and it was published in Boston. It was on the hit parade in 1863, midway through the Civil War. This woman, my father's maternal grandmother, lived a long life into the early 50s. And I can remember meeting her, talking with her in her favorite chair, and so forth. So the very idea that I can stand here in 2022 and tell you that I can remember meeting a woman who was born in 1860, a year before Lincoln was inaugurated and the Civil War started, is crazy, right? But true. So, Wendy, Mayor Nicholson, this is quite a building, a museum. I know you're very proud, as we all are. And to me, it's an important part of the rich history that is Lynn. Thank you.
Before we introduce our next speaker, I just would like to give you another story. I just happened to, you know how it is, you can't stop talking. Anyway, this hall, and this took place about, I'll say 2 or 3 years ago now, but a young lady who was finishing up her dissertation for a doctor's degree in where and how what the welfare system got started. She came in just on a lark, and at the time, Larry Campbell, one of the volunteers here, was looking at some documents, and she was looking over his shoulder and said, "Oh, can I read those?" And she picked him up and she started reading, and she exclaimed, "This is where today's modern welfare system came from." Well, not only from this hall, but wherever there was a post, this was the norm. This post in particular happened to be a relatively wealthy post. And over its lifetime, they distributed to Lynn's veterans and families and orphans over $200,000 back then. In today's world, we were just looking at it, and it is, that in today's money would be $6.4 million that they gave to the people, the veterans of Lynn. And it shows you the importance that they placed on taking care of their own. We have that same call to arms today, that we must take care of our veterans. That's so important. And places like Chelsea Soldiers Home, Holyoke, where they are presently living. There's a lot of them up there. I go there at least, right now it's on hold because of COVID, but I was there once a month. We brought in a story about the Civil War and some goodies, and we always had a good crowd that would come and watch what we were doing and saying. And now we're going technical, and we're going to try to set it up so that when we run programs here, they can watch it up there. But anyway, that's getting off the thread. I'd like to introduce the great-granddaughter of Sanderson. Where are you? Come on up. Yeah, thank you.
This is a surprise to me. I didn't have any prepared remarks, just so you know, so I'll be very brief. But I have just returned to Massachusetts after probably more than 40 years kind of traveling around the country. I actually joined the Navy at 18 when from right here in Lynn. And that kind of launched me into a career that took me all over the country. I just found this post kind of serendipitously. I'm doing genealogy now, and the reason I'm doing that is because I don't know anything about my family. There were no stories told. There were no pictures. So I really have just a handful of pictures. And so I, unfortunately, know nothing about George other than that he was a mayor of Lynn, which makes me very proud. But I will say that he gave me the best grandmother any granddaughter could have, Marietta. When I came in this morning, I was shocked to receive a picture of another member of my family who was also a member of this post. David Clark Pillsbury. And when I had no pictures of him. And when I look at this picture, I now know where my father got his looks from. And it made me cry. So I am overwhelmed with gratitude for just the little bit that this post has given me, and I hope to be present here more. And thank you, Wendy, for what you gave me today. I think this post is amazing, and I think everybody needs to give as much money as we can. Thank you very much.
And the other relatives that we may have pictures, she will be able to go home with a picture of the rest of her grades in her family, because there was, I think, 4 in the service of our country back then, and it appears that they will probably have a picture on these walls. And we have all these digitized now, so you're able to, you're not the only one, but most people who come, and if they had a relative that lived in Lynn during the life of this post, and they were in the Civil War, there's a very good chance we have a picture. In addition to the ones that are on the wall, we have the glass negatives also that makes these pictures. So we can certainly, and we have, I think, about 700 more that aren't up on the wall because they ran out of space when they were working. Because over the lifetime of this hall, there was around 1,800 members. And most of them had their picture taken, hoping to be able to one day adorn these walls. I can only say one other thing in closing, and that is you're in a room that is absolutely one of a kind now in the nation. There is no other, and I can say this because I've had a number of sons of Union veterans from all across the country. I've invited them here 2 years ago. I had, I was 18 now, 4 years. I had 2 busloads of brothers who were at our national encampment out in Framingham. And by the way, if we had a hotel in this town, I could have had it here. But anyway, they, on the way over, were giving me what for. They felt the best hall was their hall in Michigan, Lansing. And it was brutal, but I didn't want to say anything. I was trying to be a good host, and I brought them into this hall. And in front of everybody, I said, "Now, what do you think? Is your hall better than this one?" And they all said, "No, that there's nothing like this in the country. Nothing at all." Now, there's other halls out there, and they're nice halls. There's a beautiful hall, or I should say a beautiful building, out in Worcester, which was a good-sized post out there. But they turned it over to the city, and the city finally sold it off, and everything is gone now. And the only thing that's there is a stone building. Everything else is gone. So those are the reasons, part of the reasons that we're here today, to get you guys out there excited about this place. And let's keep it. We don't want to lose this place to the pressures of modern society. Because when you come through that door, you got drummed in today, and that's how they communicated in the Civil War, because they didn't have any kind of telephones or any of the other gadgets they used in the Second World War. It was either a drum or a bugle or the flags. And I got one more story, and then I'm going to say I'll quit, because I know everybody's got 5 minutes to get out before I have to stop. And that is one of our, well, actually we have two. Behind me, you might want to look at these two pictures, but the top picture is a picture of a gentleman by the name of Adams. He is a Medal of Honor recipient, and he received that because at Fredericksburg, his regiment was ordered to charge Marie's Heights. Big open field going up on a hill, and then a sunken road, and behind that sunken road, the Confederates were just having a field. The regiment starts up the hill. Now, one of the ways that they communicated in that war was, as a regiment, you went wherever the flag went. If the flag went down, you went down. If the flag came up again, you got up, and you followed that flag wherever it went. 8 men carried that flag for the regiment going up that hill and got shot down. This gentleman, at the time he was a lieutenant, he came along and picked up the 2 flags, and instead of continuing straight up the hill, which was tantamount to murder, he ran to the left. The regiment went with him out of the slaughtering pen that they were in. So he saved about 2/3 of the men in that regiment by just making that forward move to the left instead of straight up the hill. And for that, he was awarded in 1900 or 1899, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. The other Medal of Honor that we have is the second picture here, a guy by the name of Poole, and he was the one that was on the Kearsarge during that battle. And he received his medal because he stayed at his post with a live Confederate shell under his feet. They fired a 100-pound shell at it. It's a picture of the shell that we managed to get out of the Smithsonian, where the thing went under and fouled the mechanism for steering the ship. And but he stayed at his post. He didn't, like I would say, most people would say, oops, it's time to get out of town. That's a big bomb down there. But he stayed there, and as history shows, the Kearsarge ended up sinking the Alabama. So I want to thank you all again, and if you want more stories and know the facts, we got them. Come on down anytime. And I'm sure if I'm not here, Wendy's always here, and she'll be happy to help you find a relative or hear one of the many, many, many stories that are here. This is just a treasure trove. Yeah, it's a lot of stories. I have to, and I thank you all for coming. Now, it's my understanding that if you go out that door and then walk back over and across, there's some light lunch, some sandwiches and drink water and stuff like that. So if you would like, thank you again for coming, and I do want to say, have a great day.